Well, hello, everyone. This is Rosalind Henderson. I am the administrator for Entrepreneurs Double Your Income by Mastering Leadership Skills. Today, I have an absolute treat for you. Ben Gay the Third, the phenomenal Ben Gay the Third. He's a living legend in the sales world. 50 years. Let me say that again. 50 years in professional selling. He has been the number one salesman in every organization he has worked for. He has been professionally trained by fellow sales legends such as Dr. Napoleon Hill, J. Douglas Edwards, Earl Nightingale, William Penn Patrick, Zig Ziglar, and other greats. Whew, my goodness. Ben is known for his most powerful work, The Closer. That's what I know him. That's where I learned about him. And it is the known foundation of professional selling. You find the contents of this in books, audios, videos, news letters, teletrainings, and seminars. He lives with his wife, Gigi, near Lake Tahoe in the little northern California town of Placerville, California. Thank you, Mr. Ben Gay III, for being here today.
Well, thank you, Rosalind. I appreciate it. I've been looking forward to this for several weeks. I'm glad it is finally here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Woo, I know there is so much we can glom for you. We could be here for hours. But let's start with getting to know you. Where are you from originally?
Born in Springfield, Massachusetts, a Yankee, raised in Atlanta, Georgia. Therefore, I'm a Southerner by the grace of God.
Yes.
Atlanta is my emotional home. So if we met on an airplane, I would tell you, and you said, where are you from? I'd say Atlanta. Later in the conversation, I would have to admit I've actually lived in California for about 50 years.
My.
I haven't
Okay.
unpacked yet, though. I'm ready. If Delta calls me, I'm ready.
You're ready to go back to Georgia anytime.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. And so, how did you get in sales?
Uh, I was raised in a family of salespeople. All of my
Mm,
aunts, uncles were salespeople and or owned their own businesses and so on. So I really never thought of anything else. I never had any aspirations to be a doctor or anything. And then in school, grammar school, they started the fundraising things. So I was selling Krispy Kreme donuts and saltwater taffy and tickets to this or that and paper drives when they used to gather up newspapers and sell them to somebody. I guess I was in the gathering stage, but in the Krispy Kreme donut thing, I won a bicycle. I was number one in the contest and won a bright red Columbia bicycle just by knocking on doors and using a little script my dad taught me. And that sort of hooked me. And then at 14,
absolutely.
my father suggested I stand up just to see if my legs worked and go do something. So he suggested I borrow the family mower. I told him I didn't have a lawnmower. He said, it's all right. It's that thing down in the basement with the wheels and the blade and all. You can borrow that one. And I mowed a few yards and then discovered that manual labor was really not my specialty. So he said, well, why don't you start a little company? You sell the jobs, solicit the jobs, you inspect the jobs, you collect the money and split the money with your friends. Hire David Bannister, he named my best friend at the time. I said, why would he work for half the money? He said, because you're going to tell the customers to, after it's done, to pay you what they think it's worth. And they will pay you 2 to 3 times what you would have ever asked for. Then when you split it, you have all you were ever going to have, plus, and David and gang will have all they'd hope for and more. And I started off, and then I needed another guy and another guy and another guy. I'm not being sexist. We didn't hire girls to push lawnmowers in the 50s. They were home playing with Barbie dolls or something. So in the growing season in Atlanta for several years, I had 20, 25 kids working for me. And I was making as much or more than most of the adults in our neighborhood. and we lived in a nice neighborhood. So that type of thing just pulled me in. As I repeat, I really never thought about doing anything else. I don't think I've ever had a job, short order cook briefly in a friend's restaurant. Uh, and he didn't fire me, but at some point he said, "Okay, we won't need that anymore, but I'll be in touch." So I don't. Apparently,
It
I
was
wasn't a good
a
short
soft
order cook.
firing.
Yeah,
But
and I
that's just amazing. How
yeah,
old are you at the time that you are working with 25 other children? How old are you at this point?
14.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. My
So
gosh.
it was again, it was ignorance. I didn't know anything else. I just thought I was raised 2 blocks out the front gate of East Lake Country Club, where my family belonged, Bobby Jones' home course. And so the people I grew up around or near or caddied for or was allowed to sit and listen to were the chairman of the board of Coca-Cola and Home Depot and of that ilk and level. And so my comfort zone, Jim Newman, a dear friend of mine, created that term, comfort zone. It wasn't created then, but that's what it was. My comfort zone was set high. I just expected to be a winner. And I've had some downs and ups and downs along the way, but I just expected to be a winner and didn't know anything else. I sort of like was it the bumblebee? No one ever told it that aerodynamically it cannot fly.
Yes.
Yeah, anybody who's, my friends at NASA and so on, will all tell you it's not possible for it to fly, even as it buzzes around your head. So I guess I was the bumblebee.
That is just fascinating. And, that just is a testimony to getting experience early and to have these high expectations early on and to be with,
Yeah.
those like-minded people. Boy, it could take you places you never dreamt if you have that exposure early. And I'm saying that because I'm a former teacher. So I always keep those things in the back of my
Yeah.
mind.
Well, you've had personal experience with that. One of
Absolutely.
one of our adopted children, Lamont Bowens, was in a public speaking class that I taught at Lompoc Federal Penitentiary.
Oh.
And here's a great example of success or lack of it by zip code. I was born in an affluent, upscale zip code, and that was what I saw. Lamont was born in the barrios of San Diego and Los Angeles and so on, and his heroes were drug dealers and pimps and so on. So when I met him, he was a 19-year-old drug dealer. He was doing 5 years, former drug dealer. His goal was to get out of prison, stick somebody up, get $300 or $400 and finance his way back into the drug industry. So fortunately, he and I ran into each other, and I spent a little time with him. And ultimately, we guaranteed his college education. First, I helped get him a GED. Then he qualified for college somehow. That came as a surprise to me. We guaranteed his tuition. And then a few years later, after graduation, he called me and he said, "I need another letter of recommendation and maybe a guarantee." And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm going to law school." So this Lamont Bowens, don't let your past hold you back, is a successful attorney now with offices in Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, New York, somewhere else. He sort of bewilders me. And he called me a few months ago and said, "I need another letter." And I said, "My God, how much is this one going to cost me?" By the way, I've never had to pay out a dime. I guaranteed his tuitions. I didn't pay him. And he said, "Don't worry, you never will have to pay him." And so far, so good. But this latest one was a letter of recommendation because he's up for a federal judgeship in the juvenile courts
My gosh.
somewhere in the federal system. So I'm about to have to start calling him Judge Bowens.
Oh, how I love, you know what? This is another conversation altogether that we can be on this conversation forever, because this is the type of thing I think that needs to happen to really rehabilitate someone. But that's
Yes.
another subject altogether, and I don't want to mix things up. I got to have you back on then, because this is an important topic right here. But I
Okay,
know
good.
that there are entrepreneurs, in our group, and they all have various levels of experience and expertise. Some of them are very familiar with sales, some are not so much so. But they want to close their sales ratio. Okay, and we know that you've been the number one salesperson. You have the golden touch. You've had the golden touch for 50 years. Okay, so what suggestions, or just maybe one or two suggestions you can give the entrepreneur to begin to start increasing their sales, closing their sales ratio?
Well, I've owned and run businesses for years, so I can speak to them as an entrepreneur, business owner, etc. But what I've always been is the chief salesperson.
Mm,
Wherever I've
mm,
been, I'm out doing
mm.
the seminars, doing the group closing, and so on. So yeah, I know people who own business say, if I'm not a salesperson, I don't want to be involved in selling. I said, we're going to miss you after you've got a business. Because if you're not a top salesperson and or bright enough to hire one and have him or her duplicate themselves, you're not going to last. It's all
Mhm.
selling. Everything is sell. As Elmer Wheeler, the old sales trainer, said, nothing happens till somebody sells something. And
Yes.
that was true when he said it in the 20s or 30s, and it's true now. So I would encourage you. I can selfishly plug books and so on, but people say, Mr. Gay, I'd give anything in the world to know what you know about selling. I said, well, good news. It's less than $100. Uh, Many people at that point didn't prove that they didn't really mean they would pay anything. They were just talking. But for those of you who are serious about learning how to sell, from my experience, I wrote it all down. And if you
Yes.
don't mind, I'll give them a website to go to where they can get my material at a discount, and also with free shipping. And one of our employees just dropped something within earshot of my microphone. So as soon as I get off, they will be fired. Uh,
No, mercy, mercy.
but anyway, I wrote it all down in the closers part
Mm-hmm.
one. The website to go to, by the way, is stores.ebay.com/Ronzoni, RONZONE books. And there they have all my books, special pricing and free shipping. That was the closers part one, the best selling book on selling and closing ever written. Sold 10.5 million copies when we quit counting
Amazing,
25 years ago.
amazing.
And then the closers part two, which frankly is a better book. Pardon me, I'm having trouble getting this in. Is a
Mm-hmm.
better book, but I wrote it with the understanding or the belief you've already read part one, so I didn't have to cover the basics again.
Okay.
And then
Mm-hmm.
the series goes on. This is the closers part three, also available there. And then this is a little treasure. The guy who my first sales training came from an industry giant named J. Douglas Edwards, who
Mm-hmm.
died without ever writing a book. Voila, I wrote it for him from
Oh,
from his teachings, and my
mm,
notes and his recordings. That's all available there too. Why did they sell it for less than I sell it at my own website? Well, the key is /Ronzoni Books. Gigi's maiden name was Ronzoni. Gigi's my
mm-hmm.
wife, and she doesn't have the product cost I have. I have to pay the printer and everything. She goes in my warehouse and steals her inventory. So she has no product cost. And then when she
Mm-hmm.
sells something, she packages it up, or they do, brings it over to our shipping thing and puts in our system, so she doesn't have any postage costs easier either. So it's hard to compete against her. But if you
You
if
know
you
what?
really want to know what I know about selling, I literally wrote it down.
Yes, and that is, I would really encourage anyone in our group to run, not walk, and get those three books, because that's That's really, it's an art and it's a skill. It's something that is very nuanced that I'm finding. But I'm still going to ask you just to toss out nugget, one little nugget that could really make a difference in um, our ability to sell a little bit more effectively.
Well, in the Closers Part 2, the last chapter, I wrote, it was inspired writing. The day I wrote it, I was with a legal pad and a pen and thinking about what I was going to do next in the book because it was time to wrap it up. And a guy knocked on, because I've been struggling with what is that special thing. Zig could say, he and I joined the same business on the same day back in 1965. Zig could say, well, they say this and you say this and so on. And I would watch him. He was 18 years older than I was. I'd watch him in meetings and he wasn't doing that. I had taken notes about how to do it, but that wasn't what he was doing. And the best salesman I ever worked with, Jimmy Rucker, my running buddy in high school, who was just a natural. When we introduced him to selling, he took off like a big bird. And Jimmy would say in training classes, well, say this, and they'll say this, and so on. And after the meeting, I say, Jimmy, that's not what you're doing. I never see you doing that. He said, well, that's the explainable part. So what I was struggling with and had for years is how do you explain that unknown thing, what's really going on? And so I hear a knock at the door. A guy walks in the office with a tool belt on. And I said, hi, how can I help you? He said, I'm here to fix your filtration system. And I said, filtration system. I jumped up, shook his hand, walked into the door, said, I'm very sorry, but you'll have to reschedule this. Go do something else in the building. Maybe I can take you in tomorrow. Shut the door behind him, threw the thumb bolt, sat down and wrote Sales Infiltration, the last chapter in the Closers Part. Because that's really what I and Jimmy Rucker and Zig Ziglar and all the great salespeople, no matter what they say and do and tell you, that's what they're really up to. They infiltrate the other team. There's not team A, the salesman, fighting team B, the customer. It's not a war. They first infiltrate and form a new team. I call it Team C. And Team C is owned 50-50 by the salesperson and the customer. And they together have agreed to try and solve a problem. So what sales filtration is, when you were growing up, your parents probably gave you some puzzles from time to time. And they came in a puzzle box, and on the cover of the puzzle box was a picture of what the puzzle was supposed to look like when you got through. Sort of gave you a clue as to why there were 500 pieces inside the box. Sales infiltration is the color picture on the sales puzzle box. It shows you exactly what we who have been very successful in it say, do, act, why, etc., and how you too can do it. In wrapping up the long answer to a short question, the other thing I would encourage people to do who are in selling, or they're in selling whether they know it or not, so get serious, is understand selling isn't something you do because you can't do anything else. Properly practiced with the right product and service, it's the highest paid profession on earth. And the good news is you can be in the highest paid profession on earth without, unless you're selling high-tech medical equipment or something, without a college education or a PhD or whatever. I'm a high school graduate. Barely. I got thrown out of 2 high schools. So it took me 3 attempts to get through high school. My father said they must have based it on height. You got to 5'10" and they handed you a diploma. It certainly wasn't based on anything you learned. So with no experience other than mowing lawns and stuff like that, and no education other than what the state of Georgia required. You had to be in school until you were 17 or something. What they required, I don't have any qualifications at all, except my comfort zone was set high, and I had some mentors along the way who were kind enough to teach me this is a skilled profession that can be learned by almost anyone, and you need to take it seriously and learn it. when I talk to schools and they say, what would you say to a young Ben Gay? I say, get serious sooner.
Mm, yes, yes. That's good. This is good. What is your belief about sales scripting? Are you into that or not?
Absolutely. Uh,
Mm,
we built a company that took in $1 million a day, Holiday Magic Cosmetics, based solely on scripting. Everybody at 759 in hundreds of locations across the United States, thousands of locations around the world, in all of our various companies, whether you were selling motor oil additives or cosmetics or vitamins, somebody at 759 stepped to the front of the room and said, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is whatever. I'm a general distributor with whatever company they were in. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's special meeting. And they went on for 47 minutes, showed a film. At
mhm.
the end of the film, it said, turn to the person who brought you here, ask how you can get started in fill in the blank. And then the lights came up and somebody turned to you with a legal pad and started drawing circles. And everything that came out of his or her mouth was scripted, 6 closes, scripted.
Mm,
Without scripts, I was in the business 6 months and didn't make a penny. Not even a penny changed hands. And one day I walked into the meeting room at the Georgian Terrace Hotel in Atlanta, was greeted by my sponsor, Bill Dempsey, and he said, Ben, I need to talk to you. I said, okay, the boss wants to talk to me. He said, I don't want you coming to the meetings anymore. And I said, what? That really wasn't an option for me. By that time, we'd borrowed $5,000 in today's money, $50,000 to be in the business. I'm making $100 a week working for my father. There was no other way to pay off that amount of money other than making some money. I said, why? And he said, well, frankly, you've become depressing. Well, I'd never heard Ben Gay and depressing used in the same sentence in my life. I was the class clown, voted wittiest in my senior year in high school and so on. And I said, I don't understand. He said, well, see, what happened was the day you joined, I gave you and your partner and Zig, and I gave you scripts about how to recruit people and bring them to the meeting. You obviously haven't learned it because you don't bring people to the meeting. Then I gave you an opportunity meeting script, 47 minutes, and you haven't learned that. So therefore, I can't put you at the front of the room. And then, because people see you here all the time, they assume you're doing well in spite of that cheap sport coat. He didn't. I don't think he needed to say that. That was sort of a vicious slam.
it was. It was.
But he said we had a system. If you couldn't close your prospect, you raised your hand, and somebody with more experience came over and closed the deal. He said they raise their hand. You're a nice guy. You go over. They call you over because they assume you're doing well, or else why would you be here 5 nights a week? And then you go over and you haven't learned the closing scripts. So you blow. You don't. You not only didn't bring your own prospects, you blow off theirs. So that's the reason I say you're depressing, and I just really can't have you around. I said, okay, I'm down $5,000 at this point. How do I get back on board? He said, you learned the scripts that I gave you the first day we met. And when you can stand in front of my desk and give them to me word for word, not thought for thought, word for word,
The
I'll
word.
let you come back to the meetings. So a week or 10 days later, I did it. I said, all right, now what do I do? He said, well, now that you know the recruiting script, here's an idea. Go say it to people who are not already in our business.
Yes, yes.
And I thought that was a brilliant idea. So I did. And 2 or 3 nights later, walked into the Hotel Georgian Terrace Hotel Grand Ballroom with 5 prospects, 5 buying units. Husband and wife is one,
Wow.
so on, 5 buying units. And because I'd learned the scripts, they gave the meeting from the front of the room. They weren't brave enough to trust me with that yet. The lights came up. I got out my legal pad and I went through the number of closes it took. Could be 6, but I don't think I got that far with each of them until all 5 committed. 4 wrote checks, and the other one needed a few days to raise money. I made more in the 15, 20 minutes following the meeting than I had made in any 2 years in my life.
My
And,
goodness.
and I thought, whoa. And the answer, your original question, what do I think about scripting? That's what I think about scripting. And we built Holiday Magic up to $1 million a day in 1970-ish, early 1970 money, because I was able to duplicate myself. Everybody was saying what I would have said if I'd been there. And then in 1976, I started the world's first 800 call center, the National Communication Center. After we got rolling, we were taking 50 to 60,000 calls a day, and every single one of them was answered with a script. And then if you said, I need to talk to operator 72, back in those days before a computer on every desk, they had a big, looked like a Sears catalog in front of them. They turned to operator 72 page and they read the script, whether it was for Xerox or Ginsu knives or any of our clients. So 50, 60,000 times a day, we sold products all over the United States and to a degree the world on a script. Built the whole 800 call center industry on scripts. Now, people
Yes.
say, I don't like scripts. If you've been in selling over 30 days, you're already on a script. It's what you've fallen into saying. The difference is it a good script or a script that you drifted in, a good tested script, or one that you've
Hmm.
drifted into through laziness and slothfulness? So I'm not just for scripting, I'm for good tested scripting, just like in direct
Scripting.
mail. They test the letters, and then they keep mailing the one that works.
So I'm going to assume that forming well crafted um, pitches is in all.
Never say pitches,
Don't
scripts,
say pitches. Okay.
presentations. Drop pitches from your vocabulary.
Okay. 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 Sorry, Ben. Presentations. Presentation. I'm sure that the audience can find how to craft one in your books.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
in the way you do it is you get with the top salesperson, man or woman, find out what he or she is saying and doing, have that recorded, transcribe it, and clean it up, and then test
Mm.
it. Every organization has a top salesperson. There's however accidental, there's a reason that person is the top salesperson. Find out what they're
Mm.
doing. Shadow them. You go into a restaurant and two ladies usually approach your table. It's because one is the real server and the other one is learning. What do you do when you
Yes.
approach? I love the shadows because I have a lot of fun with them, kidding with them, and uh, so on. But I shadow if I go into. I did some work. They wanted me to write scripts for the first Pong games, the first video games. You used to put a
Mm-hmm.
quarter and sit down and play ping pong on a screen. And you could go to the bathroom between your turn and the other guy's turn. The ball moves so slowly. We were so amazed by it, but today it looks a little primitive. But they wanted me to write scripts. I said, great, who's your number one person? And they told me, and it happened to be somebody I knew, Jerry Bowes. So I got out my little cassette recorder, put it in front of him, said, give your presentation. He did. There were some flaws in it, but it was pretty good. I had it transcribed, cleaned it up, got on the phone, tested it myself, and we almost doubled sales uh, immediately because we didn't double Jerry's sales. He was doing okay already, but we were able to duplicate and improved Jerry.
Mm-hmm. Boy, you make such a good point. I'm about being an apprentice sometimes. We talk about the school
Yeah,
system and all that, but sometimes you just need to find somebody who's doing it. And what I like what you said is they're not telling me how they do it. I go and I record them. I go and I watch them. I go and see how I can make that recording even better. And then once
absolutely.
I find the secret sauce, stick with it. That's I'm going to remember that because that is major what you said right there.
Well, if I hadn't tripped onto what you just said, which is brilliant, I wouldn't have made it because I would have written down as I did what Zig said he was saying and what J. Douglas Edwards said they were
Yes.
saying, but that wasn't true. They were saying from the stage what was easy to explain to somebody, A, B, A, B, A,
Yes.
B. Well, a lot of times the prospect hasn't been to prospect school, so he or she doesn't know what they're supposed to say. And when they don't say what they're supposed to say, what you have coming next doesn't work either. Hal Holbrook just passed away. Uh, he was not a friend, but an acquaintance of mine. He did Mark Twain. Every Mark Twain performance he gave was 2 hours, including a break in the middle. He had 9.5 hours of Mark Twain scripted material, word for word, in his head. So when he went on stage, he always used the same opening story because he knew the reaction it was supposed to get. It was like putting a thermometer in a turkey. And he would use that, and based on their reaction, he would reach back into his 9.5 hour memory vault of Mark Twain stories and pull out one. He said in 40 years of giving that performance, he never ever gave the same exact performance twice. But every story within the performance was scripted unto its own right. I call them scripted nuggets. So my little secret when I go on stage, I have an introduction. And in fact, I think you have a copy of what is normally said about me before I go on stage.
Yes.
And it gets a standing ovation because it's a tested script. I wrote my introduction. Uh, I get a standing ovation. And as soon as they're settling down, I say, let's get this Ben Gay thing out of the way. And I
Yeah.
listen carefully to how they laugh. I can tell when it's a room full of people who are made to be there and wish they weren't, or happy to be there, or whether they paid personally or somebody else paid for them, etc. It's my Hal Holbrook opening story. And then everything that I say from that time on will be scripted, but not necessarily in the order I normally do it or have done it in the past or what have you.
Hmm.
And their reaction to every one of those stories or examples determines the next one. But I repeat, no matter what I'm saying, it's scripted.
Ooh, that's powerful. And that always reminds me, I'm sorry, I'm going back to teaching, but as a
Yeah.
teacher, you want to have your lesson plans. You want to make sure that put into that lesson plan and know what you're going to do. You're scripting,
Yeah.
what you're going to teach. But in the moment,
Yeah.
I react
Working with
to,
kids.
yes, I react to what needs to happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I have
Yeah.
the script always in the back of my head, or I can go access it. So it's kind of a similar thing. I think that
Exactly the same.
this could really change your thinking about about your interactions, about the next presentation that you're going to give for Toastmasters, or how you show up and interact at a networking event. I mean, it really can begin to, if you start taking what you just said and just expanding it. Oh, this is mind boggling.
Well, that's exactly what we did in the. Yeah, I do it with every company I work with. I always go back to the first example because it was uh, big and immensely successful right off the bat, and it was scripting and duplicating yourself. I used to call it utter and complete standardization. I have a letter within arm's length of me of a letter I wrote. He saved it all these years and just sent it to me recently, that I wrote to John Carr, one of our top salespeople in Chicago, putting his distributorship on probation and saying if the problem continues, he was off script, he was ad libbing. And we sent private detectives into meetings from time to time to record them to see if they were doing it, because it wasn't uh, thought for thought. It was supposed to be word for word. And somewhere in the letter it said, John, forgive me because this may be my fault. Apparently you thought giving the meetings uh, as written was a suggestion. It's not a suggestion, it's a job requirement.
Mm.
And so I'm a friendly, charming guy, and if I want people to like me, they generally do. But if you work for me and you can take the suggestions to heart and put them into action without resistance, fine. If not, you will meet me for a come to Jesus meeting. in which case you will be put, as Bill Dempsey did to me, as
Yes.
where you will be told to go away.
Yes. Yes. Or learn that script.
Yeah, or learn that script.
Well, we're coming to the close, but I want to ask you one last question. Um, and we got to have you back. Um, uh, what is your favorite closing question or statement?
It's part of sales infiltration. And the way I
Mm,
explain it is poor hunters. I'm not a hunter, but I know enough about it to understand. Poor hunters go out in the field, and when birds take off, they start firing wildly with their shotgun, and they get few, if any, unless they brought a lot of shells with them. I'm a sniper. I'm the guy who sits in the tree quiet, and I have friends who were snipers in the military, who sits in the tree quietly, not even batting an eye, for hours, if not days at a time. And when I ask a closing question, it's not a mystery to me how you're going to respond. I've spent an hour or 2 hours or all day, whatever, getting you into position so that when I fire the one, and I mean this in a positive way, but when I fire the one shot, it will hit you. My closing ratio over the years, it's never varied more than 1 or 2%, is 86%. When I ask for the order, 86% of people say yes. And most of the 14% that don't have the money. I misjudged them. I didn't qualify them properly. And occasionally, maybe they don't like me, but those are crazy people. I don't worry about crazy
of
people.
course. Of course.
But back to the original question, if you've got them in position, if you have formed the team C I talked about earlier, where you together are trying to solve a problem, here's my magic close. Rosalind, based on what we've discussed, here's what I suggest we do. Fill in the blank. Buy the car, don't buy the car, trade in the car, buy the piano, whatever. Here's what I suggest we do. Fill in the blank. Fair enough? That's my magic close. But it's based on the pre-work.
Yes.
When the enemy is marching by, the sniper doesn't climb up in the tree in front of them. That sort of takes, you got to be in position properly. And I spend a lot of time doing that. But then when I pull the trigger, and I feel, Rosalind, an atmospheric pressure change, a way to describe it to you. Let's say you're sitting in a room reading a book, and in a closed room, and somebody behind you, out of sight, opens the door. You will feel them opening the door. It creates an atmospheric pressure change. I literally, because I'm tuned to it, I've made that a skill. I am tuned to what we're doing. I'm what Nelson Mandela called a dynamic listener. So I know what I'm doing, and when I'm getting ready, think we're ready, I feel an atmospheric pressure change. And if I'm working with you on the phone, when I feel that atmospheric pressure change, I'm writing up the order. I haven't asked the closing question yet, but I know the answer. So might as well get the paperwork done while we're chatting. When I feel that atmospheric pressure change, I pull the trigger. And pulling the trigger means based on what we've discussed and or based on what you've said, here's what I suggest we do. Fill in the blank. Fair enough? 86% of the time they say yes.
Well, I'm going to
What, what,
run. I'm going to run and go get my books, my additional 2 and 3,
get them from
because
Gigi
this is
while she's still.
phenomenal. This is phenomenal.
Get them from Gigi before I take her key to the warehouse away.
Okay. Can I ask you to do me a favor, if you can, after we finish this interview, and if you
Mhm.
can put it in the comments part where we can get, just the website to where we can get your volumes 1, 2, and 3, the
Sure.
closer,
I'll
that
send
would
it
be
to
really
you
helpful.
I'll send it to you in an email, and you post it in the way you want it.
Okay. Yeah,
All right.
that would be fantastic. Are there any last words that you want to share before we say bye?
No, I feel sort of bottled up because I got a lot of stuff I'm going to tell you, but you were
I
nice enough to say
know.
you were going to invite me back. So,
Yes.
yeah, I got lots of stuff, and we'll talk about it next time.
Yes, absolutely. Well, the questions that you gave me, we could be here for a couple days. Oh, so thank you so much for being here. I know that you've given, some real good nuggets to those in the audience, and we really appreciate your heart. We appreciate you sharing your vast experience with us. And I'm just jazzed. I'm just jazzed. So again, thanks again. Until next time, everyone, peace and blessings. Take care. Bye bye for now.